This series is meant to be watched in order. If you haven't seen the previous episodes, then we highly suggest you watch those first in order to get the most benefit. Please check the description below for the links to the other episodes. So, where were we? Yes. We left off talking about the de facto Pope of ecology, Pope Francis, and how he was influenced by the original Francis, St. Francis of Assisi, the saint of ecology. In a recent YouTube original entitled The Letter, Laudato Si film, The Pope, the Environmental Crisis, and Frontline Leaders, Martin Palmer, the co-founder of the Religions and Environment Movement, had this to say about St. Francis of Assisi.
Every major faith has taken up the challenge of addressing the environmental crises, and they do so through their stories and their narratives. The first big meeting of the faiths with the major environmental groups was in 1986 in Assisi, in Italy, the birthplace of St. Francis. We had all the major conservation and environmental groups there, and we had representatives of the 5 major religions.
The influence of St. Francis is clearly evident, not just on Pope Francis, but also on the interfaith environmental groups as well, as the first meeting of these environmental representatives from the 5 major world religions took place in Assisi, Italy, the birthplace of St. Francis. If you remember, it was St. Francis of Assisi that sang to Mother Earth, Sister Moon, and also, most importantly, Brother Sun. So why was St. Francis of Assisi singing to Brother Sun? Why is the logo for COP27 a direct replica of the ancient Egyptian emblem for the sun and its sun rays? Why do all the popes hold this staff with a similar sun disk? I'm sure it's all just one big coincidence. Or maybe it's not. Maybe something deeper than just saving the planet is going on here. Maybe there's a common thread that you need to understand. These similarities are not coincidental. There has indeed been a common thread of sun worship that has existed for pretty much the entirety of human history. Oh, it's taken different forms in different cultures over different centuries, but make no mistake about it, the evidence is all there. Let me show you a few examples so you can get the point. In Egypt, it's the sun god, Ra. In Hinduism, there's the solar deity, Surya. In China, we have Taiyang Shen, the Chinese solar deity, with all of their symbolism. And don't forget about the Aztecs. They were in on the sun worship as well. And last but not least, Europe and the Romans who worshipped Mithra. Dare I say that the forecast is sunny with a chance of one world religion. It should be clear that religions on every continent throughout history have reverenced nature and especially the sun. Even the nation of Israel that was supposed to avoid idol worship was influenced to worship a golden calf, which more than likely was very similar to what you see here with the sun disk in between the horns. The sun was extremely important in Egyptian culture, and there is no doubt that the children of Israel were greatly influenced by its worship during their time in slavery. In this document located on jewishbible.org entitled The Golden Calf and Ra, it says, the Apis bull of Memphis came to be associated with the solar deity Ra, the oldest as well as the father of all the Egyptian gods. The worship of Ra was both ancient and universal. Ra was often thought to have been a golden calf born in the morning from a heavenly cow and growing into a bull by day. The interesting thing about the golden calf worship that took place at the base of Mount Sinai is that they combined the pagan worship of the Egyptians with the worship of the Judeo-Christian God, Jehovah. The book of Exodus puts it this way, and he, meaning Aaron, received the gold from their hand, and he fashioned it with an engraving tool and made a molded calf. Then they said, this is your God, O Israel, that brought you out of the land of Egypt. So when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made a proclamation and said, tomorrow is a feast to the Lord. Did you catch it? Aaron was trying to build a bridge to unite these two conflicting ideas. On one side, you had an idol that was against the Abrahamic religion, and on the other side, you had a priest of God declaring the use of the golden calf with the sun disk as a feast to the Lord. The reason he had to do this was because when they left Egypt, the Bible describes that among those that left were a group named the mixed multitude. These were people who did not abandon their pagan beliefs, but were trying to unite themselves with the adherents of the Abrahamic faith. Now, I don't know about you, but this sounds like an interfaith group to me. A very similar interfaith group that gathered together during COP27 to come together to save the planet. In this article entitled Global Religious Leaders Promote Climate Action During UN Climate Conference COP27, it says, dozens of religious leaders, Jews, Muslims, Christians, Hindus, and Buddhists from Egypt, the USA, Israel, India, Spain, and Great Britain gathered Sunday, November 13, 2022, at the base of Parliament Hill in London and other places around the world in an excited call to the leaders around the world to act for climate repentance and to act according to the 10 universal principles on climate. In another article entitled At COP27, Holy See focuses on spirit of togetherness, sharing climate solutions. It says, leaders at the UN Climate Summit were to discuss and commit to implementing strategies for such things as financing countries' emissions reduction goals and establishing new ambitions to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. And don't miss this, it says, but church leaders say the world leaders have not made significant progress on those goals yet, and it is time for them to take action and save the planet from multiple climate hazards. What's taking place here is that various faith groups are seeking to take the reins as they are not satisfied with the actions of the world leaders to find solutions. One such faith leader, named Yosef Abramowitz, went so far as to smash tablets containing the 10 Commandments for climate repentance to show disgust for his perceived lack of action on climate change. He was clearly trying to make a moment here that was obviously inspired by the story from the book of Exodus when Moses broke the 10 Commandments at the base of Mount Sinai. The idea of environmental sins is nothing new. These proclamations are being echoed from years ago when the Catholic Church released their 7 deadly environmental sins, and it certainly looks like their efforts are really starting to take root. But take a look and decide for yourself.
Well, you thought there were only 7 deadly sins to worry about, but now there are more to add to the list.
Yes, the Catholic Church has added 7 more to the list.
Paper or plastic? You could be committing a sin if you choose plastic. A new list of what might be considered modern-day sins has been published in a Vatican newspaper, adding to the original 7 deadly sins of lust, gluttony, envy, greed, sloth, wrath, and pride. The additional sins include polluting our environment and are considerably more global in nature and, according to the Vatican, aimed at those who might undermine society in far-reaching ways. That damage includes human experimentation and genetic modification, such as stem cell research and cloning of embryos. In recent months, Pope Benedict has made appeals for the protection of the environment. The pontiff has even installed photocells on Vatican buildings to produce clean power. With the addition of these 7 sins, if you're a Catholic and you drive a gas-polluting car or make too much money, you may have a few more Hail Marys to recite at confession.
It's clear that this is now being seen as a moral issue. It's clear that the influence of past and recent popes is having a worldwide influence. You can see it on full display in the recent YouTube Laudato Si film.
Esto es un coro, acá tenemos que cantar todos juntos, ¿no? La unidad en este momento es la de salvar la madre tierra, ¿no? Y salvar la biodiversidad y salvarnos a nosotros mismos y salvar a nuestros hijos, ¿no? Pero no descartar a nadie, o sea, ante una política de descarte nosotros no descartamos. Cada uno en su país, en su pueblo, en su cultura, tiene que buscar la manera de poder hacerlo. Y a todos juntos, todos juntos.
That's right. He's calling for unity. He's calling to save Mother Earth. This video was released in October of 2022, 1 month before COP27. And make no mistake about it, the message of the documentary is clearly an attempt to influence those meetings. There's a growing sentiment that these problems cannot be solved by science, technology, and economics, but rather only through worldwide unity of all people and faiths. This is exactly what we saw in the previous episode, when science historian Naomi Oreskes, in commenting on Laudato Si, insists that we embrace the moral dimensions of problems that have heretofore been viewed primarily as scientific, technological, and economic. It's taken some time, but just as the Bible predicted, the world is following the lead of the Catholic Church. We can see the religious world is uniting under the climate change movement, and the emblem chosen to represent this unifying moment is what we were talking about in the beginning of this video, the sun. And this unifying symbol of the sun should not be overlooked. Which brings us back to our story of Israel and the mixed multitude. The important thing to remember is that they found commonality around the golden calf, which included the worship of the sun. This may have been the first time this type of interfaith mingling took place, connected with the worshipers of Jehovah, but it would certainly not be the last. I know what some of you might be thinking. This is all irrelevant. Sun worship is old and forgotten. Sun worship is a relic from ancient history, but this is simply not the case. Let me explain. If you remember, I asked the question, why would all the popes be holding a sun disk if they're Christian? In addition to that, why would so much Catholic imagery have the sun included in it? The reason for this is that early in Christianity, the church did the same thing that Aaron did when he declared a feast to the Lord connected to the worship of the golden calf and the sun. The church leaders, wanting to foster unity, made compromises to their faith and joined in with the sun worshippers to try to foster some commonality. Page 58 of the book The Great Controversy puts it this way. Many who professed conversion still clung to the tenets of their pagan philosophy, and not only continued its study themselves, but urged it upon others as a means of extending their influence among the heathen. This is why you see so many idols in the Catholic churches. This is why the sun symbols are there. The early Christian church had morphed into something else. It turned into a hybrid of the worship of the sun and the worship of the Judeo-Christian God. Whether you realize it or not, sun worship will eventually take center stage in this race to save the planet. And it will be a moment that sees the entire world getting on board. Hence, the COP27 logo of the sun and its sun rays. You can see the connection that is being made to St. Francis of Assisi in the Laudato Si film as a current Franciscan quotes from the Canticle of the Sun that we have been covering.
Laudato si, mi Signore, con tutte le tue creature, specialmente messer lo frate sole. Laudato si, mi Signore, verso la luna e le stelle. Laudato si, mi Signore, lo frate vento, et aere, et nubile, et sereno, et omne tempore.
It's obvious that the influence is all there, and as I said, there will be a return to sun worship. But here's the thing, it's not going to look like the ancient worship, where people are outside of a temple bowing down as the sun rises in the east. It's going to look much different. It's going to be sophisticated, modern, and chic. If you don't know this yet, the pagan practice of sun worship was repackaged a long time ago. It was dressed up in a suit and walked right into the Christian church, and it has remained there for over 1,700 years, and the majority of people have no idea how and why it happened. The Pope is obviously the unifying influence of this environmental movement, and without realizing it, sincere people are unknowingly being led into a one-world religion, and they need to be warned. We are witnessing an intricately woven plan to bring the world to a place of so-called unity that will culminate in the enforcement of something that the book of Revelation refers to as the mark of the beast. Many people are familiar with that term, but the huge mistake that most people think is that it's going to be some type of barcode tattoo or a chip that is inflicted on us by a secret organization that's orchestrating all of this. Behind all of the organizations and the false religious institutions in this world, there's a spiritual warfare taking place. It's a battle for our minds and who we will worship and reverence. Soon enough, I will have to make a choice, and you will have to make a choice regarding whether or not we will stand on truth or be swept away in the madness of the coming one-world religion. Sun worship will be making a comeback. It will be instituted as a result of natural disasters. Brother Sun will once again be reverenced, as coercion will be used for everyone to receive the mark of the beast. And you need to find out why. So if you haven't yet, subscribe and share so that you and others can find out how all of this is going to play out. Because as I've already said, everybody's going to be involved. Hope to see you again in the next episode.